everyone. Welcome back to our World Environmental Day 2026 web series. This year's global theme, Inspired by Nature, for climate change, for our future, reminds us of the importance of climate action, sustainable development, and the role every sector plays in protecting our environment. Today we are joined by Rumbizai Munduru from Catalyst Solutions, who will share valuable insights into climate change legislation in South Africa and how businesses can navigate sustainability requirements while continuing to grow responsibly. Thank you for joining us, Rumbi.
Thank you, Nozipo. It's a pleasure to be part of this important discussion.
To begin, could you briefly introduce yourself and explain your role in Catalyst Solutions and how you assist the private sector navigate climate change as well as assist them in achieving their sustainability goals?
So I have a background in chemical engineering and environmental law, which assists me greatly with the work that we do for clients. But essentially what we do is we assist clients in understanding the legislation, what they need to comply with, helping them with decarbonization strategies, helping them meet their goals, helping them with carbon tax liabilities. Essentially, we just come alongside companies and just give them the technical support that they need. And I think as a consulting firm, we have the added advantage of having different professionals and specialists to help clients navigate those different, legal and compliance sections of the law that they need to comply with.
Thank you, Rumbi, for that wonderful introduction. Can you please provide us with a summary of key climate change regulations that affect the private sector?
Yes, there's quite a few pieces of legislation relating to climate change that affect a lot of private sector companies in South Africa. And most of that legislation really will be linked to the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, DFFE, which is essentially the government department that is responsible, for climate change within the country. The most notable piece of legislation is the National GHG Reporting Regulations. And essentially this legislation it mandates, private sector companies to report their greenhouse gas emissions to government, to the DFFE. That is the main piece of legislation. And that was published a few years ago in 2018. But following that, we now had the Climate Change Act, which was published in 2024.
Don't we love it?
Yes, we will. And it essentially, is a guidance act that will help governments, help regulate effects of climate change within the country. And one of the key things that it actually mentions is that, there must be carbon budgets that are issued to industries in South Africa. So right now there are draft regulations around that, which need to be finalized. But once they're finalized, what that means is a company like, Sephaku Cement will have a carbon budget allocated to it, which they must comply with over the specified time period. So that's essentially the main core legislation that affects, climate change and the private sector in the country. But another aspect to it is there are some financial instruments as well that help target climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. And the main one, which I think most people will know, is the Carbon Tax Act. And it's a big one. And essentially what that does is it uses what is called the polluter pays principle. And what National Treasury has done is assign a carbon price, for a certain amount of, GHGs that are emitted, greenhouse gas emissions that are emitted across industries. So if you emit greenhouse gases, you have to pay carbon tax. And just an interesting note, the carbon tax was implemented in 2019, right? And the first rate was 120 Rand per ton of CO2 equivalent. And now many years later in 2026, companies are paying 236 Rand per ton, which is about a 96% increase in the price. So carbon tax is a big deal in the country, and it costs companies a lot of money.
It does.
And going forward, I think companies will definitely have to find better ways to manage that, because the prices will only get, higher and higher as time goes on. But a last thing to add around that is it's not all doom and gloom. There are some incentives that the National Treasury has in play for companies. And the main one that comes to mind is the 12L incentive. So essentially, companies can claim back some money based on energy initiatives that they implement, across their sites. So there are some means to get some money back, from SARS. It may not equate to how much you have to pay for carbon tax, but it's better than nothing. It's something. And as the name suggests, it does, incentivize companies to just use energy more efficiently.
So energy efficiency is not just about doing the right thing for the environment, but also it can help us with our bottom line.
Yes, it can definitely add a little bit of a cushion. Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much, Rumbi, for that interesting summary of the climate change regulations. And speaking of that, what are some of the major challenges that the industries are facing in adapting to these climate change regulations? And how are these challenges evolving over time?
I think the first thing to mention really is, in as much as climate change is a big issue and there's specific legislation around it for private sectors to comply with, it's in addition to many other, legislation. So the country as a whole has got lots of legislation from an environmental perspective. So other legislation around waste, water, air quality, and a company would have to comply with all of this legislation. So one of the main issues or challenges that company have is it's a lot of different things that they need to comply with. And they sometimes are coming from different departments of government, sometimes from different branches from the same department. And obviously those departments are not like coordinating it and sending, oh, this is your to-do list that you must comply with. It's just different departments, different branches, and a company has to essentially make sure they have a handle on all of these things. So that really is the main challenge, that companies sometimes struggle to keep up with the different legislation that they have to comply with, number one, noting that even each of those legislation every now and again get updated and amended. So it's a lot that companies, have to deal with. And so a lot of it really is just around, it's too much, there's no consolidation, there's no coordination from government. So that I would say is one of the biggest challenges for companies. And then I would say a second one really is around like the cement sector. You might have heard this term, hard to abate sectors, and the cement sector falls part of that. There are just some processes, just by the mere fact of, the chemical reaction that happens, with clinker production, that you can't just easily, reduce emission. You can't really, because how we make clinker is based on a chemical reaction that we cannot change, So those are some of the issues that some sectors find, that there's only so much they can do from a process perspective to reduce emissions, outside of, other things that they can do. So that then becomes a challenge for them to say, how do we move forward? We want to be part of the solution for climate change. We want to decarbonize, we want to reduce emissions, but there's only so much, that we can do considering our process. So that's the second issue. The third challenge is around the finances. So like I mentioned, the Carbon Tax Act came into play in 2019 and the rate has doubled since then. And so so that carbon tax liability bill is just getting bigger and bigger for companies each year. So maybe in the earlier years where they could maybe absorb that cost without passing it on to the price of their products, maybe they could do that. As time goes on, they won't be able to do that. They will essentially have to increase their prices in order for them to stay viable as a business. And then for the cement sector, that's problematic because we've seen an increase in the last few years of cheaper cement imports. So if Sephaku Cement's price keeps getting higher, you stand a chance of losing customers to buy your cement because they've got all these cheaper alternatives. So that's another challenge. And honestly, my view is that, government in that sense has to get involved. Either they need to start taxing imports, because CBAM or CBAM as CBAM equivalent, definitely, because a lot of the cheaper imports are cheap because where they come from, there is no carbon tax. So they can just produce cement at cost price and, export it to South Africa without having to incur extra costs like the South African producers. But yeah, in essence, I'd say those are the three main challenges really that are probably obstacles for the private sector to comply with the legislation.
Yeah, and you touch on a very important point. I mean, your last point of being a hard-to-abate sector and being hit by the fact that, I mean, it is inherent in our chemistry, like you said, that you put heat on limestone, you're going to get CO2.
Yeah.
That's how it works, calcination. And the other aspects is with the imports that we're dealing with. It does present a challenge because outside of carbon tax, we also have SLPs that we need to adhere to because we're operating in South Africa and we need to maintain our social license to operate. So it is quite a challenge, and thank you very much for outlining it so beautifully. In light of the current legislation, what opportunities do you see for innovation and growth within the private sector? Now let's talk solutions, especially regarding green technologies and sustainable practices.
Yeah, I think that the first thing to maybe address, which is not necessarily innovation per se for the sector, but I think there is definitely a lot of room for companies in the private sector to lobby government and assist, around these areas. Like I mentioned, with the cement sector, hard to abate emissions, there's not much that can be done as it stands with the technology that's available. So for instance, government can be lobbied to say, like we mentioned, we have our own CBAM equivalent so that we can at least mitigate South African companies losing business in their own local industry to cheaper imports. So from a legislative perspective, there's definitely something that can be done with a lot of engagement with government. But more to like actual solutions from a site-specific level, I think there's already, there's some things that can be done. So even though we can't change, the chemical process of making clinker, we can definitely make sure that our energy efficiency, for instance, is on par, is the best that it can be. And that just looks like sometimes regular maintenance, like I mentioned before, or just optimizing the process. In some cases, you can do waste to heat recovery. And so by doing that, you can reduce your need for further heat elsewhere down the process. There's options like that. And I guess another one that Sephaku Cement already does is essentially fuel switching. So you guys on site already replace some of the conventional fuels with alternative fuels, which does help reduce your emissions. So that's already something that you guys are putting into practice, which I guess can maybe even just be expanded on and, replacing even more carbon intense fuels for less carbon intense fuels. And that's an easy one to help, reduce your emissions. I guess a sort of last one to speak about is more around, what about we go back to the drawing board and see, in as much as we can't change, the chemical reaction for clinker production, is there another way? Is there another reaction we can do? Is there a different method we can look into to producing clinker and cement that will result in less emissions? And again, that's not, something we can brainstorm over an hour or 2 days. Like I mentioned, it's going back to the drawing board. So it almost requires like a research and development kind of space role, like having someone who's completely dedicated to rethinking, okay, this is how we make cement. Is there possibly any other way we can do it that would, achieve the same result, but have much lesser emissions? And I guess that is sort of what companies or different industries have to start looking into, going back to the drawing board and seeing what else can be done outside of maybe other sort of unconventional methods that rather look at, okay, let's keep the process as it is, but find a way to, I'm sure you might have heard about carbon capture and storage, but find a way to capture those emissions and store them elsewhere. And I know there are a lot of pilot studies happening around the world and in South Africa, but nothing yet to the scale where it can be, fully commissioned at a plant. So you've got a range of things that can be done, but I guess a lot of it just would require time to implement.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, time is a big factor. It's a resource that most companies do not have. And outside of time, there is also the capacity that you just spoke of brilliantly. At Sephaku Cement, we pride ourselves in having collaborative relationships and having stakeholder engagements. And I believe part of that is leveraging those relationships and actually collaborating with research institutions or universities who can run with these, research or innovative processes that can help us rethink how we can make this beautiful product.
Yes, definitely. And maybe just one thing to add on to that is I think we definitely need to remind ourselves that this is not a 2-minute noodle solution. A lot of these solutions that will take time and years, and processes to be developed before they can be implemented. And I think it's good to have that perspective that it is something that will likely take time.
And money.
I
mean, you spoke about carbon capture. I mean, that is not cheap technology. Even though you will have the appetite to do it, it's actually back to you saying that we need to go back to the drawing board and actually balance everything out. Is this good for the environment? And is it also good for our bottom line? And then make sure that we protect our environment.
Exactly.
Looking ahead, what recommendations would you give businesses such as Sephaku Cement to effectively navigate these regulations and to contribute positively towards the fight against climate change?
I think one of the first things definitely is trying to incorporate climate change, as part of your daily operations, as part of your strategy, your planning, because trying to have it as a tick box exercise won't help you achieve, your goals and meet compliance. So putting that as part of your strategy and planning helps you meet your goals as a company in terms of your products, your profitability, but also then helps you, be part of the fight against climate change. Okay. The second one I would say is keeping up to date with the regulations. Sephaku so far has been very good with commenting on draft legislation, and I think that's very good because as an big industry player, you know where the obstacles are, you know where the challenges are, and it's important to note that in as much as we have, government putting forward legislation, they sit at a desk, they are not at a plant on site. So having companies like Sephaku commenting on draft legislation doesn't just help Sephaku, but just the entire industry as a whole. It's good for government to have practical feedback on, how their draft legislation will impact daily operations. So that's the second one. And a third one is around just focusing on what you can control. Like we already mentioned, energy efficiency, you're already doing so well with alternative fluids and fuels, improving on that and just focusing on what is within your control and optimizing your process will help greatly with not just reducing your costs, whether it's from an energy perspective, but also just, the more efficient you are, the less emissions you are going to have. But all in all, I think Sephaku Cement is quite a model industry player in South Africa. You guys are already doing a lot that you can do within your means to help fight climate change in the country. And that's really commendable. And I'm sure you guys will continue.
Thank you very much, Rumbi, for sharing your valuable insights and perspective with us today. Your discussion highlights the importance of understanding climate change legislation, embracing innovation, and working together towards a more sustainable future.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for participating. And remember, every action towards sustainability contributes to protecting the environment for future generations.